What is up, Planeswalkers? Theurix6 back with some more Magic the Gathering Arena. Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. It's a good deal, and it helps support the show. Now today, we're going to be going over my Mayael, the Anima deck. This is an EDH deck like I've been doing the past weekends, and I believe that this upload will coincide with the new episode of Dark Souls that I was in, that I actually play this deck in. So if you're really curious, seeing this deck in action, you can go ahead to Merchant's channel, and at some point today, I believe, that video should be posted. It may not be today, maybe it'll be like tomorrow, but hopefully it should be sometime this weekend. That's usually how we have them up. So Mayael is typically played as a just big dumb creatures. Usually they'll play like Gisellas and Avacins, very large dragons and things like that. But I've decided to eschew the typical way you build this deck, and I've decided to play it a little bit more flavorfully because I really like her home world, her home shard, I should say, of Naya, where they worship these large, giant, beefy boys, these large chunguses, as gods. So essentially, I only decided to include pretty much dinosaurs, beasts, lizards, and worms, because all of those things still felt like they would be at home on Naya. So that's why I decided to go with those. There aren't going to be any giant angels, there aren't going to be any giant monstrosities and things like that. They're meant to be more of a theme deck. So getting to Mayael herself, she's a really cheap commander, which is really nice because you're going to be able to play her several times because she is a relatively small body. Now, she is a blind elf girl who costs 3 mana, and she can pay 6 to activate and look at the top 5 cards of your library, and you can get a creature card with a power 5 or greater from among them onto the battlefield. And that's really nice. It will whiff sometimes, but I believe if you have around 30 creatures that adhere to this requirement, you should get them the majority of the time. I think it's like 80% of the time. It might be more, but that was just the last time I checked, and that's the statistic that's in my head. But what's really nice when you play Mayael is as long as she's on the board, you don't actually have to cast anything from your hand. So you can go really a long amount of the game just being able to do things at instant speed, do things in response to people doing stuff. So you never have to really commit too many resources from your actual hand. That way, if if your board gets wiped, if Mayael dies, you'll still have a stockpile of cards. And that's one of the reasons I really enjoy this commander. Also the fact that, I'm just looking at that art. Jason Chan did a fantastic job. He's definitely one of my favorite Magic artists. But starting first off with with our creatures, because it makes sense in this style of deck, is our Motto Worm. I'm going to not talk at all about the art. I'm just going to say that is a 6 mana 5/5 that gives you another 5/5, which is really nice. So you have 2 5/5s with trample for 6 mana. What else do you want? It's great. It's great. Next up, we have our Carny Boy from current standard, because, at 6 mana 7/6 that has hexproof and can't be countered. Sometimes that comes in handy in EDH, right? If you just want to plow a big chungus onto the board and just have it so your opponents can't single target remove it, this will get you there. And it has trample, so it can't be chump blocked. It's very nice. Drum Hunter is a nice support card in our arsenal. It is a 4 mana 2/2 that gets you to draw a card at each of your end step as long as you have a creature with power 5 or greater, and since the majority of our creatures are like that, it's very nice to be able to draw some cards, and it acts as a kind of mana accelerant. Now, the reason that this card is fine in this style of deck is because of the sheer number of 5 and 6 drops that we're playing. So even though we're not going to be ramping up from 2 to 3, or I should say from 2 to 4 or 3 to 5, being able to get from 4 to 6 is very nice on this card. So we really don't mind that it's a 4 mana card, especially considering the fact that it does draw us a card. And you really want EDH cards to be very flexible like this. This is ramp and card draw. So it takes up technically fewer spots for the rest of those ramp and card draw spells. Etali Primal Storm is a sweet elder dinosaur that gets you to steal things. It's each player. So in EDH, where people are playing big things, you get to steal big things. It's so good. I freaking love this. Godsire is just one of my favorite cards. Look at that Chungus. It's a 8 mana 8/8 with vigilance, and then you can make more 8/8s with it. It's the Sire of Gods. It makes more gods. It's so good. I love this damn card. If you have Warstorm Surge or not Imistrom, but where Ancient Treads out, this card is Chungus City, man. Put a freaking slap of Lightning Greaves on this boy, and it can make so many tokens. Graveshifter. Now, we do still have a majority beasts. There are a decent number of dinosaurs, decent number of lizards, decent number of worms, etc., etc. But the fact that we do have a majority beasts means that we can play Graveshifter really easily to just get a large amount of cards back. And unless our opponents are also playing kind of a tribal style deck, they're often not going to be able to get too many of their things back. And for example, if our opponent is playing like an elf or humans deck, or maybe they're playing a warrior deck or something like that, we benefit from that too. So I'm just going to put these back in not order because I'm garbage. Oh wait, I read this wrong. Ignore me. It's never happened. I play a different card in Zombies that does what I just described, but this only gets you your stuff back. Ghoul Rage Beast is the MVP in this deck. It is single target removal on a beast. So since our creatures are typically going to be quite a bit larger than our opponent's creatures, we can play something like Rage Beast and then kill one of their things. And then we play another creature. Let's say we play Big Chungus Godsire and we kill another thing. Imagine having Rage Beast plus something like Warstorm Surge, which of course I will get to in a moment. But the ability to shoot chunks of damage at various things at a time is so nice. Iroas. Now, you might be saying, well, this isn't one of those things that you mentioned. It is, because they're gods. And see, Mayael worships the gods. Usually they just happen to be beasts, but Iroas is fantastic because of the fact that it makes our big chunguses, who don't have something like Trample or a different evasion, it makes it so they have Menace, essentially. And Menace, very nice. We're going to be able to take out more creatures at once, so our creatures can't be chump blocked. Additionally, even if our opponent is able to block that damage, our attacking creatures don't take damage, and that's so incredibly nice. And of course, this is a 7/4 by itself, which is really helpful. Megalanoth is one of my favorites from Naya. 6-mana 6/6 Vigilant Trample, very nice. So you can attack, you can crush in essentially, and still be nice on the defense. And it has reverse trample, so if it blocks a creature, it deals damage to that creature's control, equal to the amount of Megalanoth's power. So essentially, it's like, hey, have fun attacking me. I'm going to destroy you. Now, I did say we don't have any monstrosities, but I let this one pass because it's an Eldrazi and a beast. So 9 mana 6/5. You might be saying, that's a bit much, but when you cast it, you get to destroy a target artifact enchantment. And the really nice thing about this is, as I said, you really want flexibility of your cards in EDH. So I needed another slot for single target artifact or enchantment removal. But I really also needed to make sure I had enough creatures in my deck that would be found with Mayael. So this is a nice compromise. Of course, it should be noted that this doesn't get the ability off of Mayael because of the fact that it's a cast trigger. But the fact that it's a cast trigger does mean that in situations where things get counterspelled or something like that, you will still have that trigger. So that's very nice. Additionally, you have the Emerge cost, which can make this cost functionally 1 mana, which is very nice. Mycoid Shepherd. Not any of those things that I mentioned, but it's a fungus and it's from Alara. That's where Naya Sharge is from. And I'm really sad that this is not a fungus beast or something, because I would have preferred it to be, more in line with the deck. But that said, it's a 4 mana 5/4, and that's not bad. The fact is that this card is really helpful for me to just keep gaining life, right? So if we have some sort of aggressive opponent and we're able to have our creatures die, then we're going to be getting chunks of 5 life, and that's just something that's very nice in an aggressive strategy against other forms of aggressive strategies. Nihilea, 4 mana 6/6, God. All your creatures that I have trample. That's real nice. It's real nice, because not all my big chunguses have trample. I mean, Mycoid Shepherd, for example, does not, so it can get chump blocked pretty easily. But being able to have Nihilea out means all of our creatures get trample, and we can buff them. And since we're a deck that wants to go large, we usually will have the mana to do so. Paleoloth is a sweet recursion effect. As you can see, many of our big chunguses have additional effects that are really helpful for our game plan. So with Paleoloth out, whenever we get another Chungus out into play, we get to return a Chungus from our graveyard to our hand, and we get to repeat the Chungus cycle. Protean Hulk. I legit used to call this Protein Hulk because I didn't know any better, but this is Protean Hulk, and when it dies, I get to search my library for any number of creature cards with converted mana cost 6 or less. Now, the reason that's important is because we do have a 3 mana 5/4 in the deck, as well as some important 3 mana, other 3 mana cards. So we'll be able to get, for example, Ronus, that's a thing, and that 5/5, and that's very nice. Or we could just get one large Chungus. That's something that we can easily do. Rampaging Balos, very fun staple. It's a beast. It's a 6/6. It has trample. It's a token generation card. There's pretty much nothing to hate about this card. Regal Behemoth, which is called a behemoth and is a freaking lizard. I think it might have been errated to a dinosaur. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, it's not a beast, and I'm offended by it. But that's fine. That's fine. We have a nice 5/5 Trampler. When it enters, I become the Monarch. I like that. Being the Monarch has its benefits. And it's also a ramp spell. So not only is this a card draw spell, I believe that's what the Monarchy does, but you have ramp in it. You essentially get this doubling effect for your lands, and that's really, really helpful, especially if you're able to get this off of a Mayael at the end of someone's turn, and then you untap with this card. Ooh-wee. Big boy, we're in Chungus Town. Rona's the Indomitable. It has Death Touch, which is nice, and it is indestructible, which is nice. So it's very hard to deal with, which is nice. It can't attack a block unless we control another creature with Power 4 or greater. The majority of our creatures are with Power 4 or greater, so it can usually attack and block. But what's really nice is that it has kind of a blended effect with Nylea, in that this costs a little bit less, doesn't pump our creature's toughness, but it still gives them the +2 and gain trample, and it costs a little less. So that's, that's always nice. Rukh Thar, a Chungusy boy, it's not a beast or anything, but it's a Chungus that hits other people for casting non-creatures. How dare you come into my Chungus zone with your dumb the cantrips and your draw spells and your board wipes? No, you're taking 6 damage for that, son. Now, Rukh Thar is just so crippling to so many different EDH decks that are running, a bunch of artifact ramp, a bunch of card draw and things like that. Just a bunch of small effects that they want to play over and over again. Rukh Thar is going to chunk them for a ton. And, it really adds up over time. It does have to attack each turn, but that's fine because it has Vigilance. Another thing of note for Rukh Thar is that it has Reach. Now, our deck is a little bit weak to flyers because essentially we refuse to run Angels in it. But the fact that this Chungus boy right here has Reach means that if our opponent is attacking us with a decently sized flyer, and we know we have Rukh Thar in the deck, we can Mayael to try and Hail Mary a Rukh Thar out. Seselem Godspeaker, this is one of the 3 cost creatures that's very helpful in the deck, and what she does is essentially ramp us from 3 to probably 6. Reveal any number of creature cards with Power 5 or greater. I'm just gonna say Chunguses. Reveal any Chunguses from your hand, and you add a green mana for each card revealed this way. Now, you are giving your opponent information, but who cares? You're ramping, right? So if you have this on turn 3, and you have 3 Chunguses in your hand, you can play one of those Chunguses, even if you don't play a land, right? So being able to go from 3 to potentially 6 is backbreaking against a lot of decks, especially considering we aren't running a lot of the artifact-heavy ramp because we want other styles of ramp and such in the deck. So Seselem, really, really nice card. Shefet Monitor. This used to be Krozen Tusker, but I do believe Shefet Monitor is just a little bit better. The reason for this is, even though Tusker is a beast and this is Lizard, when you cycle it, you get to search for that land and put it on the battlefield, and it does cost 1 more to do so, but having that land enter directly onto the battlefield is a little bit better because it is essentially true ramp, right? You're functionally paying for a rampant growth plus 2 mana for a cantrip, right? So that's essentially totally fine in my eyes, and it's a Chungus when you need it to be. Siege Behemoth is a win condition. It has hexproof by itself, which is really nice, and as long as it's attacking, each of my creatures can also just assign combat damage as if they weren't blocked. So essentially, you could just swing out. Doesn't matter how many creatures your opponents have to block with, they're going to die. And that is very nice. That threat, the threat alone is a really nice political tool, right? If you have Siege Behemoth out, and you know no one can deal with it, and you have the ability to take out one of the players, you can pretty much say, hey, I'm going to take one of you guys out, give me a reason why it shouldn't be you, right? And then they can start giving you deals and stuff, and it's a really nice way to add politics into your game. I for one, really, really like politics, so. Spearbreaker Behemoth is a nice 7 mana Chunkus. It's indestructible by itself, which is, of course, very nice. Since the Commander Tuck rule changed, it's, no longer a thing, essentially. There have been fewer that I've seen board wipes that exile. There are still things like Terminus, but I don't see those very played because white isn't played very often. There is Cyclonic Rift, which I essentially boycott that card. I hate that card so much. But, there are still bounce effects and things like that. But for the most part, Spearbreaker Behemoth is going to stick around. And you can help it so that your other Chunguses stick around as well for just a measly cost of 1 mana. And if you're keeping Mayael up anyway, right, if you have Mayael constantly and just have that 6 mana up, you can decide it at any time to either use Mayael or if you have to use Spearbreaker. So it's, let's say you're in a 4-player game, they go to the third person's turn. Let's say you're the first person. The second person's turn. Then, wait, I'm dumb, whatever. This person over here. You, someone, this person over here. Let's say they decide to cast a board wipe. You were planning on using Mayael on the other person's turn. But now you can just pay some mana for Spearbreaker. A lot of your creatures don't die. Mayael does, but who cares? You have mana to reasonably recast Mayael. Or let's say that you have a significant amount of mana and you know that your board wipe can occur. What's really nice about Mayael is because they can't force you essentially to play a creature, right? Because you may not have one. You can just fail to find. You don't. I mean, even if you couldn't just fail to find, you can just may anyway. So you can, for example, Mayael in response to a board wipe to try and get Spearbreaker Behemoth and save some of your other creatures. So that's a very nice play line there. Spellbreaker Behemoth, it can't be countered, and the rest of our beasts can't be countered. Also, it's a 4-mana Chungus. Who doesn't like a 4-mana Chungus? Now I'm gonna do one of these because so the camera does not like to autofocus, unfortunately. But, you know, we'll just keep doing the manual thing here. It's fine. Everything's fine. Rakdos. It's 5 life and a Chungus. And it gives you a mini Chungus when it leaves the field. That's what else do you want? Thunderfoot Beloth. It's a 6-mana Chungus. I'm not going to stop. That has trample. And as long as you have your commander, it and other creatures you control have +2/+2 in vigilance. If you have Mayael out, Mayael is now a 4/5 with trample. And the rest of your team, let's say the majority of them are 5/5s, the rest of your team are 7/7s with trample. It's so good. Vagrant Plowbeats, very similar to Spearbreaker Behemoth, and I initially didn't have this card in the deck because I was like, it's a 7-mana 6/6, whatever. But the ability to regenerate your creatures is very, very important. You know, this is a deck where we're tying up a lot of mana in a relatively small amount of creatures. So we're only going to be really able to deploy a creature a turn. So board wipes really, really set us back a lot more than single target removal does. So we need a lot of ways to protect against those. And I've decided, to throw in Vagrant as well as the Spearbreakers, and they've been working out fantastically. It's, the same cost of, unfortunately, it doesn't have a clause where it just regenerates constantly, which would be like the analog, but you can still pay for itself to regenerate. And you can do this on blockers. There's no stipulation other than the fact that it has to be a Chungus. Speaking of Chungi, that's the plural of Chungus now. Xenagos, God of Revels. It's a god. It isn't a beastie thing, but it works really nicely with large creatures. It's a 5-mana card. That's a 6/5, really nice. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can give a different creature haste and +X/+S, where X is that creature's power. Imagine the play line here, my friend. I just kicked my stand a little bit. I apologize. Imagine the play line of Xenagod, and then the following turn, you cast Godsire. Godsire becomes a 16/16. Let's say for some reason you also have Annihilate out, because why not? It's a 16/16 with Vigilance and Trample. You attack with that sucker. Someone takes a chungus of damage, and then at the end of, it's haste until end of turn. So before the end of your turn, you tap it and make another Chungus. It's so good. It's so good. Woodland Bellower, a very similar card to Protean Hulk, in that we cast it, when it enters the battlefield, we can search our library for a non-legendary green creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. There are, as I've shown, at least one card so far that we can get, as well as the 3-mana 5/4. The problem I always have with this card is I constantly forget the non-legendary clause and try to get Ronus every time. Like, for some reason, every time I play this, I'm like, oh yeah, I just get Ronus, and then someone's like, that's a legend. I'm like, god dang it. So it's a little disappointing, but the fact that it's a 6-mana card that comes in, it's a Chungus that comes in with a mini Chungus is really, really nice. So speaking of Woolly Thoktar, this is a 3-mana Chungus. We can play this on turn 3 if we want. Playing this on turn 3 will surprise a large number of people, and even though life totals in EDH are at 40, chunking someone for 5 early on is going to draw a little bit of attention, so you do want to be a little careful. And of course, oh my gosh, who can forget Zakama, Primal Calamity? This card is just a beast, man. 9-mana card for a 9/9, that's a lot, but we have a decent amount of ramp. Not a large amount, but a decent amount. Vigilance, Reach, Trample. Ooh. The trifecta, so good. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap all your lands. Ooh, man, that's real nice. It also works with one of the lands, one of our hideaway lands, whereas we can cast it from hideaway, and that counts as casting, because it doesn't say from hand, and we get to untap our lands. Oh, don't mind if I do. And you can bolt creatures, you can naturalize things, and you can gain life. You're probably not going to gain life, usually, with this card, unless you're in a really dire situation. But being able to just target down specific creatures and artifacts and enchantments is really nice. This gives you so much single target removal, and it's also a 9/9. Now, why is Harrow here? You might say, well, it's because you're going to instance, but we're not. Harrow should technically be Sylvala, Heart of the Wilds. She's a legendary creature and she's really good, but the unfortunate part is she's like $50, and I can't justify buying her right now because Harrow does a similar enough job. Essentially, you know, she would be replacing a ramp effect in Harrow, and Harrow works for right now, so it's Harrow. Austere Command, I think one of the cards that I play the most in EDH, because it's so versatile in what it can do. So if we're playing nothing but large Chungi, we can destroy small Chungi and, you know, all artifacts, or all enchantments. Or maybe no one is playing creatures we care about, we just destroy all artifact enchantments because our opponents are playing things like Ghostly Prison, things like Crawl Space, you know, Norn's Annex, things like that. And we're just like, yeah, we're not having any of this nonsense. It's so nice, you know, helpful against pretty much every deck in the format. Cultivate, it's a ramp spell. That's pretty much it. We need to ramp. We're playing a large number of Chungi. Decimate. I freaking love this card. 4 mana, destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land. The unfortunate bit is you do need to have a target for everything, so sometimes you may need to target your own stuff. But being able to just selectively destroy things is very, very helpful. You might be saying, well, why not just run like a board wipe style card? Or why not just run like mass artifact removal? It's because of the versatility that you have with this card, right? You can destroy a land of someone's, a creature and enchantment of someone else, and then that pesky artifact of the third person, right? So being able to really just keep your removal running at different people is a nice way to not get target down. Recross the Paths is a ramp spell that I really love, because you reveal cards until you get a land, you put that into play, and you don't put it into play tapped, so you get to use that land immediately if you have the ability to. Then you clash with your opponent, which is where you just reveal the top card of your library, and if you win by having a higher CMC card, you get to return it to your hand. I've had several turns where I've been able to, you know, I've been on like 5 mana, for example, I played Recross the Paths, I got an untapped land, and then I was able to win the clash, which is literally on the screen. I got to win the clash, and then I cast it again, ramping myself from 5 to 7 mana. And that's really nice because I was able to untap the next turn, play a land, and play a nice Chungi boy, if you know what I'm saying. Rishkar's Expertise. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Usually it's going to be at least 5. And you can cast a card with converted mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Now, you might be saying, well, it seems like a large number of your creatures are CMC 6 or greater, and that is true, but there are plenty of artifacts, enchantments, you know, ramp spells, for example, Recross the Paths we can play, that work with this card. So really, that's not too big of a deal, and the main part of this card is the draw effect. Now, what's really nice about this is that it occurs on resolution, I believe, so you're not going to be in a strange situation where you just, like, are in a sad situation, you just like draw horribly, you don't have anything to play, etc., etc. So Sylvala's Stampede is kind of like Tooth and Nail, except it's not as dumb as Tooth and Nail. And the reason I say that is because theoretically I could just run Tooth and Nail in this deck and then like have, you know, an Avengers Zendikar plus a Crit Hoof Behemoth and like just essentially win with that constantly, but that's not fun for me. I prefer like big plays that don't immediately win me the game, so that's why I'm with Sylvala Stampede right now. Starting with you, each player votes for wild or free. Reveal cards until you hit a creature for wild, and for free, you can just put a permanent onto the battlefield. What usually will happen is that people will, depending on your hand size, people will tend to go for wild, because if you're casting Sylvala Stampede, you are pretty much assumed to have at least 2 really dope permanents into your hand to put into play. So usually they'll go with the random, and sometimes you'll get some really awesome plays from that. Shamanic Revelation, 3 mana, another draw spell. Draw a card for each creature you control, which is usually nice. We don't tend to have a large number of creatures, but even if this only draws for 3, that's usually fine because it has an additional effect. And we gain life for each Chungus that we have, which is helpful, right? If let's say we just have 3 Chungi on the field, we can play this, draw 3 cards, which, you know, is totally fine as a green effect, and then we get to gain 12 life. And that might not seem like a lot, but, you know, in EDH, that is technically a little bit over 25% of your life total, and that's a nice buffer to have. Titanic Ultimatum is a flavor. I don't think I cast this very often. I mean, it is a singleton style game, but I mean, you can't play a Chungus theme deck and not have Titanic Ultimatum. 7 mana. All colored mana for until the end of turn, creature you control get +5/+5, first strike, lifelink, and trample. Ooh-wee. If you cast this and you don't win, I feel bad for you, son. Because this card's freaking awesome. Boros Charm is not technically Boros Charm. Oh, who would have thought? Boros Charm is technically supposed to be Teferi's Protection. Teferi's Protection essentially phases out you and all of your permanents, which is really nice because it protects them. Boros Charm does a similar thing, except this doesn't protect against bounce spells, whereas Teferi's Protection does. But Boros Charm does work, for the most part, very, very similarly, in that it gives all of your permanents indestructible, which is really nice. Or you can give a creature double strike. You very rarely do that, and Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player. Also very rarely happens. This is almost entirely going to be a way to keep your creatures alive. Beast Within. It's funny because we're playing a beast deck, and we get to destroy target permanent. Technically, this shouldn't be in Green's color pie. It really should say destroy target non-creature permanent, but it's printed. I'm gonna play it. Also, Phyrexia is really cool, so but being able to just hit literally anything with this is very nice. You do give your opponents a 3/3, but we're a deck with 5/5s. We don't care. Heaven and Earth. This is what I really like this card because it allows me to have another versatile style board wipe. Versatile style. So Heaven on the front end can help us get rid of pesky flying creatures. Since our deck runs essentially none, I don't think we run any flying creatures, we can just pump a bunch of stuff into X here and kill a board of flyers, a board of angels, a board of dragons, a board of demons. I don't care, they're gone. And then for Earth, we can go ahead and kill up to whatever we want. So if we're dealing with a bunch of tokens, for example, cough cough goblins, we could, for example, play Earth for just, you know, 1, 2, 3 damage, and that kills everything except for our stuff. Of course, Mayael would die, some of our smaller creatures would die, but we could do X for 2 and kill those. What's really nice about Heaven Earth is that if you have to, you can go ahead and cast Heaven at the end of your opponent's turn for essentially X equals 0, and then Earth on your turn, or you could pay essentially Heaven for 0 and a green, and then Earth for red, red, and X. It's not great, but you know, red, red, green, X to kill all non-flying creatures, it's helpful. Sylvan Reclamation is a 5-mana instant. Exile. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get to my button in time, I sneezed. That is awkward. Anyway, Sylvan Reclamation is a 5-mana instant exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments with basic land cycling. This used to be, what is the darn card? Return to Dust. But I found that this is a little bit better because you can exile 2 no matter if this is on your turn or not, and it has basic land cycling. So it does cost a little bit more, and it costs green instead of white, white. But the flexibility on this card is just, it's too hard to pass up. Then we have a nice shiny Swords to Plowshares. Ooh-wee, look at that. I could edit, but that would take me way too much time, and I'm never gonna edit. I might get an editor at some point, but I'm not gonna do it myself. Swords of Plowshares. It's single target removal. Like it's great. If you're running white, you probably run this card. Winds of Kalsizma. This is a 2-mana fog effect, and if you control a Chungus, instead prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by creatures that I don't control. So let's say my opponent is attacking with a bunch of large Chungi, and they're thinking, well, if he blocks, he loses his creatures too. No, I'm going to block, and then I'm going to kill your creatures while mine stay alive. Or what I usually use this for is just a fog, right? I think kind of like every EDH deck should run at least 1 fog, because people just don't see it coming. They never suspect it, and they just swing all out, and you're like, all right, well, fog, I'm alive. You can also use this as a nice political tool, right? You can say, hey, they're attacking you with, they're attacking at you for lethal. I can save you, but I need a large amount of incentive to do so, right? So it's a great card all around, in my opinion. Aura Shards. We like blowing up artifacts and enchantments. That's pretty much it. I hate this art. I wish it was better, but I don't care. It's really effective. Darksteel Mutation. When you want to shut down a commander, play Darksteel Mutation. Your friends will hate you, but who cares when they're Darksteel Mutation? Oh yeah. It turns them into a useless insect. I mean, they can block with it because it's indestructible, but who cares? Elemental Bond. 3-mana enchantment. Whenever you cast a creature spell, whenever a creature spell enters the battlefield with 3 or more power, which is almost always, draw a card. Essentially, this is just a nice draw engine for us. It replaces the creatures that we get out, so it's very nice. It works with Mayael as well, because it's not cast. Lurking Predators. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature, you can put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, you may put that card on the bottom. A lot of people hate Lurking Predators because it just makes playing annoying. It's like, I'll cast a spell. Lurking Predators trigger. So land, I'll put it on bottom. Cast a spell. Oh, Lurking Predators. Ooh, I got a Sakama. I'll play it. You don't cast it, which is unfortunate, but who cares? You get free creatures. It's sad when someone destroys this and you whiff on the all of the triggers, but who cares? It's, you know, it's a card that has potential to get you a lot. Rhythm of the Wild, a really nice new card from Ravnica Allegiance. Creatures you control, or creature spells you control, sorry, can't be countered. That's nice, but that's not what we're here for. We can give our Chunguses haste. And who doesn't want to give Chungai haste? Sandworm Convergence, another, as you can see, card that deals with flying creatures, because that is sort of a weakness of this deck. Sandworm Convergence, 8-mana enchantment, a bit steep, but who cares? Because in addition to being that nice flying blocking for us, we get 5/5s every turn. Well, at the end of each of our turns, I shouldn't say every turn. War Storm Surge, this is the real card. If you're able to get this down early, you can spiral this out of control. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. You can just throw damage around. I'll go ahead and play this Woolly Thoktar, deal 5 damage to your face. Then I'll go ahead and play Godsire, and I'll deal 8 damage to your creature there. Then I'll attack with them because I have this Gruul enchantment out that gives all my creatures haste. So yeah, I'm just gonna deal a chunk to you, man. Totally. Speaking of chunks to you, man, we have Rare Ancient Shred. It's very similar to Warstorm Surge, except for it is a fixed amount of damage, so it's always going to be just 5, which is unfortunate, but it does cost 1 less, and that 1 less could mean the difference between being able to use it or not. So since a large number of our creatures are 6 mana anyway, Warstorm Surge is a little bit clunkier than if we have Rare Ancient Shred on 5 into a Chungus on 6. Next up, we get into the artifacts. I realize now that I haven't actually been saying how many of each I have, but I actually don't think anyone cares. We are running, of course, the Boros Signet, the Gruul Signet, and the Selesnya Signet. I don't know if it's next. It isn't. That's fine. So yeah, we're running the Signets because I like them. I mean, that's pretty much it. They're just a ramp for 1, essentially. I mean, I could be playing, like, Mana Crypt and Mana Vault and all that nonsense, but I hate Soul Ring and its ilk, so it can F off. Lightning Greaves, because we want Mayael to never die. That's pretty much what Lightning Greaves is for. Selesnya Signet, I talked about that. Swiftfoot Boots, essentially the exact same as Lightning Greaves, except that it costs 1 to equip because it's a less broken Lightning Greaves. For what it's worth, it does give your creature hexproof instead of Shroud, which can come in handy, but I don't usually care because I'm usually not putting other things onto my creatures. Thematic Compass, I really like this card because it ramps and it allows us to deal with other Chungus decks, right? If we need to put a stop to a creature killing us, I'm apparently going to die, we can use the flipped part, which I guess I will show for those of you who have not seen it on Arena, Spires of Vraska, which essentially just makes a creature not attack us, functionally. Then we go to our Planeswalkers. As you can see, I don't have very many artifacts. I could theoretically run something like a Soul Ring, and when I play on Dark Souls, I do put Soul Ring in because everyone else has Soul Ring. I mean, the series is called Dark Souls. Like, I can't not play Soul Ring, but I just hate Soul Ring for what it stands for. So, so I don't play it. But next up, we have our Planeswalkers, Domri Chaosbringer. I'm trying out. Essentially, it allows us to ramp into our 6 drops on turn 5, which is really nice, and of course, it gives them Riot, which attacking in with a Chungus on turn 5 is always nice. It can -3 to get a large number of creatures. What's really nice is that it doesn't have to be a Chungus, so we can get some of those smaller creatures as well. And of course, it's -8. Although it doesn't give us real Chungai, it doesn't give us 5/5s, it just gives us 4/4s. It's still nice. I'm not going to turn up my nose at a 4/4 at the end of each end step. Not just mine, everyone's. Garruk Primal Hunter is a sweet, sweet boy. The triple green is a little annoying, but who cares? Because +1, it gives you baby Chungai. I'll call them weenies from now on. They go to Weenie Hut Jr. It's -3, draws cards equal to the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Sometimes this is just a 5-mana draw 8. And that's totally fine with me. A lot of the times, though, it's a 5-mana, make a green, a 3/3, and then draw like 5 cards. But if you ever get to a -6, it does give you Chungai. It unfortunately happens at once, but if you have, well, I guess we don't have Fires of Yavimaya anymore, but who cares? You're going to have, you know, like Warstorm Surge out or something. This just chunks people, man. Just getting, let's say, a minimum of 6 of these, that's 36 damage that you can throw around in chunks of 6. But still, you know, 18 damage to one player, 18 damage to another. By the time you get to this point in game, you've probably put them to dead, if not, like, sub 10 or something. So, I mean, that's just real nice. Then, of course, we get to our lands, which I believe are last. We have the Battlebond lands, which are nice. I really hope that they do an update with the enemy colors of the Battlebond lands, because I really like them as EDH mana fixing, because they just enter the battlefield like again, like in the early game, they enter untapped. It might be bad late game if a number of people have been eliminated, but you know, in a 3-player game, in a 4-player game, these are going to come in untapped, and it's just really nice. You can't fetch them or anything, but it's just a really effective thing to have. Spine Rocknull is a hideaway card, so you can look at the top 4, put a card under it, and then play it when you reach the condition of dealing 7 or more damage this turn. And for what it's worth, you don't have to be the one who deals the damage. So you can play the card from Spine Rocknull if your opponent has dealt 7 or more damage to another of your opponents, which is really nice. It is just damage, I believe. It can't be life loss or anything, but, you know, that's still fine. And 7 damage is not hard to come by in a deck with a bunch of Chungi. Mosswort Bridge is even easier to get. You know, you have 2 5/5s out, you immediately have this totally fulfilled. You can just play the exiled card if you have total power of 10 or more. That's totally fine. It's really good. Rogue's Passage is a nice way to get our creatures, our big Chungi in. We can go ahead and just pay for and give them unblockable, which is really nice. Homeward Path. We are playing big creatures. We do not want those big creatures to be played against us. We do not want someone stealing things from us and killing us with them, so we have Homeward Path to deal with that. Temple of the False God. We're not worshipping false gods, though. We're worshipping the true gods, the behemoths of Naya and so forth. But Temple of the False God is a really nice card to allow us to have that extra mana push to get us to these large CMCs. Contested Cliffs only works with some of our creatures, but I don't care. Being able to make one of our big Chungi fight another creature is very helpful. You know, it allows us to deal with cards that otherwise are just not attacking or anything like that. So, very helpful. Myriad Landscape. It fetches things. It's helpful. Yeah, it's just a fetch land, essentially. Command Tower. It makes any color. Rupture Spire. It makes any color but comes untapped. Transguild Promenade. Fun fact, it's essentially Rupture Spire. Jungle Shrine. It makes any color but comes untapped. Wooded Bastion. Rugged Prairie, and Firelit Thicket. These are all nice filter lands that help us filter our mana. Temple of Plenty, Temple of Triumph, and Temple of Abandon all allow us to scry. Now, of course, this does have to come in tapped, which is a little bit bad, but being able to scry is, one, good with Mayael. So if you really need to kind of help your chances of getting a hit on Mayael, you can use a temple before you actually activate her, and you just are able to smooth out your draws by a little, right? Just having one of these is really helpful. Temple Garden, Sacred Foundry, and Stomping Ground are all the shocks. Then we have Windswept Heath, and wait, this isn't the other two. So these, I should have an Arid Mesa and a Wooded Foothill in here, but unfortunately, those cost more than I'm willing to just randomly buy when my mana base is fine. So for right now, it's Opal Palace, which can help Mayael grow, which, you know, it's not bad. And then Evolving Wilds, the Poor Man's Fetch. Then we get to our basics, and we have, I think it's 3 planes. Yes, 3 planes. And so these are the planes from Alara, from Naya specifically. And I'm ordering some Alaran mountains, but I just didn't have any. But we have 4 mountains, non-Alaran, I'm sad. And then, of course, I think it's 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, it is 6 sweet Alaran forests. And that, my friends, is Mayael. As I said, this should be the day that Merchant uploads the game of Dark Souls that I'm in, and I will definitely be in more. I'm doing a lot more things with Merchant that are currently under wraps, but I really look forward to you guys seeing that. It was a really, really fun thing to record, and I look forward to playing more of my awesome decks. At this point, you can actually go to my Aetherb account, and if you click on the EDH folder, you can see all of the current decks that I have in some capacity, I'll say. Let's just keep that between you and I. But yeah, you can go there and you can look at them. And if you want, I can even do a poll of the decks that you all want me to finish in real life first so that I can play them on Dark Souls. So that's something that's really interesting to look forward to. Now, of course, I would like to thank my lovely patrons, especially Salamander and Croft, for their continued support. I did buy a decent amount of money worth of cards, and the Patreon and the YouTube money does essentially go all into that, right? So I was only able to justify this expense with the great help from you guys. So if you all want to support me, you can find that link in the description below. And I'm gonna make an actual announcement video for this, but I don't know when I want to schedule it. But essentially, you may have seen that there's a join button now, so you can become a channel member, and I think that's just like $5 a month. Essentially the way I'm going to treat it is you're going to be essentially a $5 patron. There are some things that you won't have access to just because of the fact that like Patreon and YouTube aren't like the same company and stuff. But for as best I can, I'm going to treat you like any other $5 patron. So you're going to get as much as I can those same rewards, except that you're also going to get these channel icons and stuff, and like channel emojis and whatnot. But in order so that the patrons are still getting rewarded, they're also still going to have a few patron-only type things. So, you know, everything else, like other than those two little dichotomous things, everything's going to be the same. So if you want to support me and you don't want to deal with Patreon or something, you can become a member on the channel. I really don't mind if you guys do or not. This is, honestly, it's just a hobby that I really have enjoyed. But becoming a supporter really does help make sure I can keep going and I can justify buying like channel equipment and stuff. Like I need to buy a green screen for you guys, and that money is going to come from the patrons, right? So very, very grateful for everyone who decides to support the show. Other than that, you can find link to the Discord server where we chat and play games and stuff, the Aetherhub account where you should totally go check out my ETH decks, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this cool DeckTech. I really love Mayael, and I hope you do too. And yeah, I hope you can go ahead and tap that like button, add a subscription to your mana pool, cast a comment to the comment section down below, and share pass the turn and the video to your friends. And until next time, all will be one.